Good morning, Bitcoiners. I hope you're doing well. I'm loving my life. Who could complain on a day like today? Things are going great. Things are going great. I'm not the one who can complain. It couldn't be me. It won't happen. No way, no how. It's not going to be that way. We got a lot of people in the chat already. Good morning indeed, Vaughn. Hope you're doing well. Jesus is King says, good morning, crew. Let's make this Thursday the greatest Thursday of all time. I'm down. We got JJ Fox saying, change it must be. Bye-bye old lies. In with the new. Pray for our children's generation. No, for our generation ourselves. We will see the golden age. I see someone else asking. We've got Matt FRL saying, is this the golden age support group? No, this is the golden age enjoyer group. We are here to enjoy the greatest show on earth, the unveiling of the golden age, which we will talk about today. Good morning, Seaberger. Another dreary sky day where I'm at. Can't remember the sun, but I do trust the sun tech working behind the scenes, just like the Bitcoin blockchain. You got it right, Seaberger. ES Empire says, good morning, gang. Hope you're doing well, Edwin. Good morning, team, indeed. Jesus is King asks, will Prince Andrew be the first for space drops? I don't know. He's not really a royal. I don't think he's at my space drop level. We'll see. We'll see what crimes he actually committed as it all comes through, but I don't think he's space drop worthy, frankly. Just too low class, just too low class. Good morning, and Chatelet, indeed, Chatelet, to all the people who enjoy trusting the plan, the non-panicans. Good morning, team. Jack2K says, good morning, and Great Awakening crew. And it seems, oh, yeah, that's the space drops. We got two people saying, yes, indeed. He will be the first in the queue. Now, just too low class. I'm starting to think a space drop is too humane for a lot of these scumbags. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood of Milwaukee. Hope y'all get some sun today. Beautiful Milwaukee. There we go, indeed. Good morning, folks. Thirsty Thursday. Have fun with your Bitcoins, kids, indeed. God knows the royal family had issues. Exactly. Good thing it's a new day with the Bampians. Time to enjoy our golden age with the Bitcoin blessing. That's what we're going to do. We're going to have a great time today. Things are moving in our direction today. In fact, we're going to talk about how the physics of the golden age are locked in. The physics are locked in. Newtonian physics all around. Not that boring quantum shit, right? We don't care about quantum physics here in the Bitcoin world, despite what Nick Carter says. Nick Carter, whom I have a great amount of respect for, but I disagree with him on the quantum stuff. I'm not interested in quantum physics as it relates to Bitcoin, and our path to the golden age is pure Newtonian physics, as the great Michael Saylor said, of course. Bitcoin is a Newtonian network. You heard that here first, I think, maybe. Could be that Pierre Rochard and Bitstein and all those guys came to the physics of it, but I'm going to take credit for now because I've been saying it for a long time. Glad Michael Saylor also agrees. So indeed, as many people have said, speaking of physics, the sun continues to be steady. It came up. We're doing great here on the east coast of America. We've got a major sunrise, and I looked. Bitcoin is also running. We're doing great, everyone. Let's have a coffee and talk about what's new. So indeed, we're talking about the golden age, but I got bad news for you guys. The NPCs are hearing something about gold today too. It's not good. They've asked the experts, everyone. They're asking the experts, is gold... So if you're out there worried about what the experts say about Bitcoin, the jury's still out on gold, guys. Is it still a good investment? What the experts say? What about that gold fad? What about the gold thing, right? The gold market has delivered an impressive performance, but what are the experts saying about gold? Historical experience shows that any asset is a parabolic rise like gold and silver outperforming the broader market, or even doubling in price within a year. The subsequent decline can be equally rapid. Gold, guys. Here's what the investors say. How should investors view the situation amidst uncertainty? Looking ahead, market turmoil often breeds buying opportunities, but the process can be bumpy and maintain. Guys, the markets are bumpy. No way. We got experts. Thank you, experts. We love it. We got this from, whoops, get out of here. Oh, more experts, right? They're trying to figure out, trying to get their mind around gold. We'll see if it's still okay. But they're also equally going to try and tackle space mining of Bitcoin. Elon Musk is pushing to build data centers in space, but they won't solve AI's power problems anytime soon. The experts have some opinions on space mining. I know what's going on, guys. The experts are going to tell you all about space mining now, okay? They're going to tell Elon Musk about space mining, even though Google is selling space mining, even though lots of people are selling space mining, even though Bitcoiners have been talking about the problem of space mining for about 10 years. I remember at Breaking Bitcoin 2017, Peter Todd did a presentation on Elon Musk being a space pirate Bitcoin miner. And even then we were talking about it, the latency, the speed of mining, where the satellites had to be. This was all already calculated by Bitcoiners 10 years ago. But you got experts from Fortune magazine. Sharon Goldman interviewed them, right? The experts that are still wondering about gold, even though there's people with last names called Goldman and have been around for thousands of years. That's what we got. Oh, no, that's not what I want. Why did it do that? This is what we got to the silent impact. Guys, this is a sad story, guys. The silent impact of climate change on mental health. What is eco-anxiety? What's eco-anxiety exactly? Eco-anxiety is a term that encompasses the set of emotional responses of the population to the anticipation and experience of phenomena associated with climate change, explained psychologist Teresa Pereira to Euronews. How do you manifest and deal with these negative feelings? Globally, the consequences of extreme meteorological phenomena fueled by climate change are multiplying, from rising average global temperatures to droughts and intense forest fires, not forgetting the increasingly frequent storms with heavy rains and winds that can wreak havoc. All of these phenomena have increasingly obvious negative effects on people's daily lives. In recent weeks, Portugal has been hit hard by a train of storms, which has caused extensive damage throughout the country, particularly in the center region, according to figures released by the intermunicipal community of the Lera region in Portugal. The 10 municipalities that make up the CIM alone are estimated to have suffered losses that could exceed €1 billion. What do we got, though? What do you say? What could trigger eco-anxiety? Eco-anxiety is a normal response. How can we help deal with eco-anxiety? Mapping eco-anxiety. Look at all this eco-anxiety. Does it say anywhere that not reading articles filled with fake news about the weather causes eco-anxiety? They didn't mention that. They didn't mention that part, right? I just want to read what they do say you can do. According to Pereira, based on existing scientific research on the subject, eco-anxiety can also motivate individuals to adopt environmentally protective behaviors. So if you suffer from PTSD from reading fake news, guess what you might be more likely to do? Environmentally protective behaviors. In other words, pro-environmental behaviors. And one of the 3 common strategies that are most effective in dealing with eco-anxiety, based on some so you'll get rid of your anxiety if you just recycle hard. You got to recycle a lot, okay? So if you're out there feeling eco-anxiety, go recycle. Go be a garbage man. Go change garbage from one bin to another, and all of your troubles will go away, right? Is that the most fiat job ever, recycler? Sorting the garbage, but with a fancy title. Tough luck, guys. Sorry about your eco-anxiety. Oh, I had a palate cleanser, but I got to move that. Oh, this is pretty funny. So some people have eco-anxiety, but others are worried about the cost of living and the cost of their homes, in particular, house buying prices. But the Dutch, with their wealth tax, are full of ideas. They have another one here. Housing crisis solved if Dutch people live less extravagantly. Guys, just like, I know you're worried about your house, but you can dig a hole, okay, and not one to die in. You can dig a hole and just live there, put some straw above it. It's fine, right? Don't worry about it. You don't want a door with windows and a roof. Come on, you can do better than that. Don't be so extravagant. You can do better. You can do better. This is good too, right? So this is in the UK. So we'll be talking about the UK a few times today. But this is what we know: court archive revealing extent of grooming gang scandal to be deleted. I guess it was no big deal. It's just no big deal. Get rid of that. We talked about it already. Delete, delete, delete. Get out of here. What, a bunch of crying kids? Oh, sorry. Sorry about that, kids. Sorry you got gang raped. Sorry. Sorry about that. Better delete the data. Oh, this is good too. This is in Facebook. This Facebook ad banned for negative stereotype of black men. Imagine they put a black person. How racist can you be? They're used to showing white people sexual assault on the subways, but remember, white people, it's a fake thing. So, right, it doesn't exist. No one ever showed a Polish person committing these crimes. They're just white people, right? But you can't put a black person there because it had to be taken down. So censorship, I say. No, it's not censorship. It's a lie. Don't let them get away with it. This is also really great, right? So I got this one from the Olympics. Who cares about the Olympics? New York Times says, can you believe that Vice President J.D. Vance, right? He does not seem to agree with Eileen Gu's choice to represent China rather than the United States at the Olympics. Gu, who was born in San Francisco, has won 5 medals for China, where her mother is from. So, you know, how racist of J.D. Vance to comment on an athlete's country preference. He has to support her preference. If he criticizes, if the Vice President of the United States criticizes it, of course he's racist. Of course. Oh, it's obvious, right? It's obvious. Duh, right? Apparently, if you don't endorse American-raised athletes defecting to adversaries, you're a bigot. You're a bigot, right? Big it. You're a big it. So there you go. I'll get to that one next. But first, I do want to give you a bit of a palate cleanser before we go on. Yesterday was Ash Wednesday, which means we are now in carnival season. And here's just a beautiful little video from not my hometown, but a town I lived in for a long time. I used to flee Quebec City when the carnival started because everyone has they're like the vuvuzelas, remember from the South African World Cup? These big giant plastic horns, and with all the little streets in Quebec City, it just would resonate too much and just be too loud. And it goes on for like 2 weeks. But I wanted to share this with you all because it is just pleasant to see my old hometown, my own town where I used to go to law school. It's a beautiful place. Let me share it again because I'd like you to hear some of the beautiful French being spoken in my hometown or my law school town. Here you go. This is what we got. A little bit of a palate cleanser for y'all today.
C'est fête à Québec. La reine vient d'être couronnée. Une jeune fille qui hier encore croyait à peine à son rêve se retrouve aujourd'hui entourée de princesses, escortée par le peuple et secondée par le symbole de la joie hivernale que chacun appelle à sa guise bonhomme carnaval, bonhomme hiver ou bonhomme de neige.
And escorted by you see what he's wearing. Very cool. He's wearing the traditional clothes of the Quebecois. It's the flèche ceinture. If you know, ceinture fléchée, do we have it here? No, that's not it. Why don't we have it? I'm probably spelling it wrong. Anyway, doesn't matter. Francis Pouliot wears this as part of his just clothes, this belt that he's wearing here. It's the official sort of traditional clothing of the Quebecois. It's got some Iroquois symbols on it and stuff like that. So very cool. Very cool. Very cool. So that's what we got. Now let's move on to our other news stories. I gotta close some of these windows though. I got bonus windows today. So this is a slight NPC story, but I want to share it with you just because it's funny. So Gutierrez, right? Wait till you see his turkey neck these days. So Gutierrez, the guy who runs the UN, says the global economy must be radically transformed to stop rewarding pollution and waste. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned. Look at this fucking guy's turkey neck here. Look at this. Look at this tub of shit. UN Chief Antonio Gutierrez threatens crisis and chaos unless the world transitions from fossil fuels to renewables. The world's addiction to fossil fuels is one of the greatest threats to global stability and prosperity. We face a choice: design the transition together or stumble into it through crisis and chaos. So just looking at this turkey neck here and putting him in context, like probably 99% of the world couldn't pick this guy off the street and name what he does, name who he is, name his role and what the powers of the role are. And of course, it also signals that the UN is just completely useless and nobody cares anymore. Trump's Board of Peace is one way around it, but someone else had an idea of how to get around it. And if you didn't notice this in the Epstein files, it's important. Jeffrey Epstein here talking also about the UN. He also, I guess, didn't have a high opinion of Gutierrez. It is funny to note that Epstein did have a really acute sense of people's and institutions' strengths and weaknesses, right? I know I don't mean it as a compliment necessarily, but it is. He sort of had Bill Gates pegged from the beginning. He had Obama pegged from the beginning. It's important to notice this stuff just so that we know who we're dealing with here. But indeed, here you see some of Epstein's cleverness talking about the UN and its uselessness. And he says Davos can really replace the UN. C21, cyber, crypto, genetics, international coordination. Like my stint at the Trilateral Commission, he says, issues now need to deal with distributed trust. Now you're getting into our category, our territory. Bitcoiner territory, distributed trust, and the internet fallout is what he calls it. The internet fallout. So obviously, Gutierrez is, you're not made for the internet. This is, how they used to say a face for radio, right? This is not a face for the internet, right? When you're rocking a gullet that makes you look like Jabba the Hutt, people really don't want to hear what you have to say, to be honest. I hate to say it, but that's the world we live in, right? And so we hear from this point of view, 2018, Epstein says that the World Economic Forum should replace the UN. A year later, we get a pandemic, and the World Economic Forum magically calls all of the shots literally, and the UN disappears into the shadows. We need to see the rest of the files right effing now. Now, anyway, I'm not that worried about that. We still know about what's going on. And right effing now, I think also belies a little bit about what's going on and the kind of conjuring of attention and interest in the Epstein files that simply didn't exist before this greatest show on earth began, before the Epstein-Trump fight really put a lightning rod towards it and got people to start wondering and be interested and to start asking questions. I told you from day one of the Trump Elon fight that it was kayfabe, that it was designed to create interest in the story, and so far so good. I don't have to hallucinate any other answers than the one I've been using since day one. It continues to explain what's happening in the world. Until I see otherwise, I will continue to believe that this is what is going on. But as Bitcoiners, of course, we've been thinking about this distributed trust piece here that you see from Jeffrey Epstein. And we've been thinking about the internet fallout for a long time as well. And of course, Bitcoiners don't believe in distributed trust. We believe in engineering out the need for trust altogether and using game theory and incentives in order to create systems that don't require trust at all. In particular, a financial system that doesn't require trust. And so the internet fallout, of course, you can still see that it hasn't quite worked. The whole WHO thing didn't work. The WEF thing didn't work. The UN didn't work before that. None of these institutions work. So we're still left with this failure of these institutions to manage distributed trust. So what Epstein predicts here absolutely didn't happen, right? Nothing like that happened. Nothing like that's going on. What we've got is a situation where they've only been going down in terms of their capacity to conjure trust. And the fallout of the internet, I mean, they look retarded. And you can see from some of the actions yesterday, they still haven't quite figured it out. You've got Merz yesterday in Germany. He's now he's joining in on this a ban on online anonymity. I want real names, he says. Criticize the government. Here's your employer's phone number. Question the migration policy. Meet your new harassment campaign. Say something spicy. Your mom gets a call. Europe's building the surveillance state Klaus Schwab's been dreaming about and pretending it's about protecting children. So there you see that this same WEF architecture that Epstein referred to is just not working. They're not distributing trust. They're not finding a way to deal with the fallout of the internet. They're moving to just trying to straight up de-anonymize people. You see it as well in Greece. Greece is on the train too. This is what's in Australia. You're hearing about this in the UK. You're hearing about this all over. Greece's PM says banning social media for minors and adolescents goes hand in hand with a democratic responsibility to ensure that technology strengthens the public square rather than overwhelms us with disinformation and hate, and that if dialogue with big tech fails, regulation will be the only answer. And you can see here as well, Preston Byrne, I think, has the best take on all of this stuff. He says, this is literally just a worldwide program to de-anonymize and dox everyone who uses social media. They realize the content mandates aren't putting the genie back in the bottle, so they're just going to dox everyone and start making arrests. I'd say Preston has a pretty good prediction about what the plan is there, and you can see that this is echoed throughout. You even had yesterday Macron say the following. A lot of people talking about this. Macron says free speech is pure bullshit if nobody knows how you are guided through this so-called free speech. Now, I'm of this mind. I saw a lot of people dunking on Macron yesterday about this. It's not so simple. I think Mike Solana here does have the right context. He says this is much less offensive than the way the British government discusses speech, in my opinion. Macron is only asking for algorithmic transparency. The point is, I can say anything I want is a useless sentiment if everything amplified is predetermined by an unknown set of values. Now, Mike Solana does put some more context. For what it's worth, I think his concern is overstated, and globalists like Macron are mostly just having a hard time coping with the fact that most people left to freely express themselves will disagree with a great deal of their worldview, but very different than opposing free speech, indeed. So, don't go too far with any of this outrage today over Macron. I don't think what he said is so crazy. Now, I'm no Macron fan. I'm just saying the outrage, look what he said, oh my God, is kind of misplaced in the sense that I think he really was just in his poor English talking about algorithms and who controls the algorithm, which is something we should all talk about. I don't think it's that offensive. But the real context and the real stupidity of what he said can be found in Stefan Molyneux. So, like I said, what he's talking about algorithms here, not so offensive. What he's talking about people not understanding who's behind algorithms is a bigger indictment, and Molyneux has it perfectly. Here, Molyneux says, government education is pure bullshit if it can't teach children how to evaluate and process contrary perspectives. You have total control over educating children for over a decade. They can't navigate free speech, and that is the bigger indictment here. What Macron actually said, it's debatable, right? But put it back into its context of why are the people of France so retarded? Why are the people of Canada so stupid? Why are Americans so stupid? Why are Germans so stupid? Why are all these fucking people so stupid? And especially when it's the same education system you're trying to promote, well, why don't you fix it in education? If you have a monopoly over their education, it's not that easy to be a homeschooler, for example, in France, and not easy at all. And so they've had this net to catch people into their education systems for a long time. And when you look at their failure, that's the real indictment of what he's saying here, right? Him talking about algorithms and saying you need rules is stupid because they should just talk about education, and that's where the solution to this lies. But the education systems, of course, are trash. You can see here, this is something that a lot of people are talking about today. Mike Solana as well. It turns out that, so with all that budget stuff out of New York, Mamdani, and the school budget that's going on, he proposed a preliminary budget of 127 billion US trash tokens for education. And indeed, the entire state of Florida budget is, this is his overall budget, 127 billion. It's more than the budget of Florida. And Mike Solana points out, imagine paying 50 billion US trash tokens for public schools. They're about as dangerous as the local juvenile detention center, and half the kids can't read. Every year you're told that their future is your fault because you don't give the Communist Teachers Union enough money. Palmer Luckey, a great homeschooler, says the following. He says, the New York City Department of Education spends more on education than Japan's Ministry of Education spends on the entire country of Japan. And then Daniel, Growing Daniel, was a very funny account, says, that's why the children in New York City are so much smarter than the Japanese children. So a lot of people picking up on this. Signal says New York's budget is right now below Portugal and Taiwan, above Kuwait and Greece. 35th place on the list of fucking countries. Tokyo budget is literally half, and I don't want to compare quality of life between the two. New York City is a money destroyer running at full speed, demanding ever-increasing cash to burn and barely producing results. The efficiency of a goddamn steam engine, and I'm sick and tired of it. And indeed, the whole idea of the budget being this high, right? New York City's budget is more than Florida. And thinking about all of this failure and what it actually means, right? Thinking about just how much failure has gone into these systems. A guy like Mamdani, right? A socialist mayor who never worked a day in his life, raiding the retirement funds of hardworking New Yorkers is not lost on me. And indeed, spending it all on education at a level that's way greater than countries just for the city of New York is also stupid, because it's not like it's producing better results. Here's the actual measurement of education, right? The measurement of education, you don't even need to go into abstracts about can they understand competing points of view and how algorithmic control works and all that stuff. That's sort of even beyond the scope. What about just training people for work? What about just education that is useful in the real world? Here from the Kobayashi letter, we see U.S. college underemployment rates is at a crisis level. The underemployment rate for recent college grads is up to 42.5%. Dr. Clayton Forrester points out that college was meant for the top 10% of the population in terms of IQ. That's why it was prestigious and improved a person's lifetime earnings. But that was long ago. College today has degenerated into a grift, conning students and parents into believing that just getting a degree from any college would confer these advantages. It doesn't. There's a huge shakeout coming in higher education. So these systems are what are collapsing before our eyes. These fiat systems are what are simply not keeping up. And by them not keeping up, they're keeping the people that use them just uncompetitive as the future ends up getting created. And so when you think about the failure of the education system and what it does, it's, you've got all these communists running it, and look what they produce: unemployed kids, but also we get this from the Palestinian Columbia University, Justice in Palestine at Columbia University, coming straight out and saying we are fighting for the total eradication of Western civilization. An entire movement is fundamentally anti-American. They say we're fighting for the eradication of Western civilization. We seek community and instruction from militants in the global South. And Hunter Ash says, if Popper's paradox of tolerance applies to anything, surely it's to call for the eradication of Western civilization. These people are confessed traitors. Enough, he says. Now, you can kind of just laugh at them because they're poor and stupid. But those people that are overly educated, that are now calling for the destruction of the Western civilization, that can't get a job, that still believe in all of these failed institutions, the very ones that you had Epstein try to promote. I mean, he's literally deciding which institutions are better equipped to navigate change when he talks about swapping the UN out for WEF, and when he's talking about how to manage the internet fallout. He's trying to manage the distributed trust, and you have these universities, you have these institutions, and they're just getting weaker and weaker and more pathetic. The education system can't keep up. It's not doing anything. And so that's what ends up creating people like Mark Carney. And here's Terry Glavin, who's just a great guy, by the way. I don't know, as someone who worked for a long time in politics in Canada, Terry Glavin would have been considered, and always was, a kind of left-wing, but a traditional left-wing guy. The kind of left-wing guy that doesn't just regurgitate talking points and doesn't seem to be, trying to attempt to align with a political party. He really is one of those people that has the sort of left-wing moral high ground of, I just want to make a better world. which right-wing people do too, obviously. But of course, here we think right and left is quite fake. Most people want to make a better world until they become corrupted. But Terry Glavin here says, on the world stage, talking about Mark Carney leads a huge new anti-Trump trade bloc. In the real world, he isn't. And it's a fast-growing alliance that doesn't exist. So it's this concept here of world stage. That's what all these failed institutions have hallucinated, that there is a world stage. Who's watching? Nobody cares about Gutierrez. Nobody cares about WEF other than to complain about it. And the only people that do that do think it's something and is relevant are these unemployed people that have too many liberal degrees and were led into their stupid institutions and can't even be around someone they disagree with without having a complete and total meltdown because their brains are totally broken. So when you see Carney here and what he's done, and you realize the kind of people that do pay attention to this, in Canada, there was what you call a floor crossing yesterday. So a floor crossing is when one congressman, we use members of parliament, but it's when a congressman switches parties. So they cross the floor because in general, you pit the two parties in the parliamentary system against each other. So they're looking at each other, one side of the bench and one. If you get a majority, you start coming around the corner and start, having seats on the opposition side. So in this case, the Liberal Party of Canada, that would be Mark Carney's party, has recruited 3 individual conservatives since they took power a year ago to cross the floor. And the one they got yesterday is causing a lot of consternation because it was an Alberta member of parliament. And the Alberta member of parliament, Alberta rarely elects Liberals, and it's almost exclusively Conservatives, and it has been for 40 years. And when I worked for Stephen Harper, if we lost a single seat of any nature, urban, anything, a single seat in Alberta, it was reason to not panic, but readjust and find out how to not make that happen. It was seen as a loss. One loss was seen as not a clean sweep was seen as a loss. So there was a floor crosser yesterday, and that floor crosser, so even just to give some context, here's Ezra Levant saying, an Alberta MP was elected to oppose Liberal excesses. Albertans go along with it, play the game by the rules. Months later, the governing Liberals buy off that MP. So the reason he left, he said, was because he was so inspired by Mark Carney's speech in Davos. So these are the kind of sludge people that we're dealing with when we're talking about the world stage and all of these institutions. We're dealing with, not the best, and people who indeed are not really aware or incorrectly predicting where a lot of this stuff is going to head. So Ezra Levant predicts, like Preston Manning was the old leader of the Conservative Party, was called Reform at the time in the 1990s. And here he's been predicting, as have I, that Mark Carney will lead to Alberta secession and Alberta leaving the country. And it's looking more and more like that. By picking off an Albertan member of parliament to bring them within 1 seat now of a majority government in Canada, so they won't need to go to elections for 5 years if they get it, then you can start to see that these institutions are completely bullshit and completely fake. And they're also losing their resonance, right? I mean, just look at what's going on in Canada with inflation. This is from the the central banker who's taken over the country. Beef price inflation in Canada is surging at 18.8% since he was elected. I can tell you this is true because I buy steak like crazy in Canada, and I can't believe how much it's gotten. I go down to the United States now to get my steaks. There's a lot of good steak in Quebec, but I do prefer the Vermont steaks as it is. So no big deal to me. But watching, sometimes if I don't take a trip that week and I have to buy a steak in Canada, I know some good farms to go to, but they, of course, check the prices at the grocery store and adjust all the time. So you have this situation now where Canadians are being made, the ones who support Carney have to lie to themselves more and more because of how bad things are getting. And it's even worse than that, right? So this guy crosses the floor in Canada. Carney is closer and closer to his majority government. And here we see very distressing news out of Canada, which is that the military is going to start doing French Foreign Legion recruitment. There's a new visa type in Canada, trained foreign military personnel. They're going to start importing foreign trained soldiers. Immigration Canada is introducing a new express entry pathway for highly trained foreign military personnel. So our government is going to give people who don't want to assimilate into Canada culture high-powered weapons. And Andrew Shield here says, this government astronomically ballooned the Canadian population through massive uncontrolled immigration. Simultaneously, they indoctrinate everyone from newly arrived terror supporters to sixth-generation Canadians that Canada is a worthless, genocidal, illegitimate colony occupying stolen land. Now they find their 10 million new arrivals are either unfit or uninterested in defending that trash pile, unable to recruit even to the piddly threshold of 80,000 sludge people. They determine that the problem in all of this is obvious, not enough foreigners. And so they look to import foreign mercenaries. They understand neither nationhood, Canada, nor national service. They have destroyed all three, but still mess around, breaking what they can, opened the borders and increased the population by 4%. And so this is why I continue to predict that Canada is absolutely toast. It will not survive what's happening. There's no way it can survive what's happening. And after this floor crossing, after this news, Danielle Smith will be giving an address tomorrow on the future of Alberta. On Thursday, I'll deliver a special televised address to Albertans at 6:45 to speak directly to Albertans about the road ahead for our province and the decisions that will shape our future. Tune in on your local television channels or online. So I don't know exactly what she's going to say. I suspect she's going to continue to play it even and mention that the referendum perhaps has enough votes to move forward. We'll see about that, but that could be what it is. I do expect her to have an appearance of neutrality tomorrow. I do not believe she is going to campaign for pro-Canada at all during the speech. If she does that, it will be a big surprise. I think she's going to do a statesman thing, like what she's been doing on all of her summer tour, where she's been an autumn tour, where she went out and solicited feedback from Albertans. This turned into the petition signing stuff in Alberta. So here we go. Speaking of nation states and institutions and failure, it looks like that's what's going on. And indeed, the Americans and other people are noticing. Many people are having a similar sentiment after all of this. The military, foreign recruitments, the stolen election. Matt Walsh saying, I'm not being at all ironic when I say that there is a better argument for invading and overthrowing the Canadian regime than there is for invading and overthrowing anyone else. This is a country committing unspeakable atrocities right next door. And so I think things are moving quick. And indeed, Canada is not going to be able to figure this out. Indeed, here, it looks like the ticker is on, and it's going to be big, big trouble for Canada going forward. You heard that here for a long time. So this Canadian story, of course, and the election, let's call it, because remember, Mark Carney was not given a majority mandate. He was given a minority parliament, which means he had to govern with the opposition. Unfortunately, in Canada, the opposition is incredibly weak and stupid. And I have a pretty good idea of who they are because I used to work for that party and see what's left. And they kind of lost the actual conservative wing. They're kind of liberal light and have been since they chose Andrew Scheer, who succeeded Stephen Harper back in 2017, and he went up against Trudeau with one of these, stupid, I'm not so conservative, so I'm a little bit liberal, and that never works when you go against the liberal. That's cover band stuff. You end up going for the real thing. Nobody wants to hear a cover band. If the cover band is a cover band for Trudeau, well, he better be looking. Andrew Scheer was a typical, like Gutierrez, turkey neck loser. And, was smiling and tried his nice thing. He's become much better And he's a super cool guy, by the way. He's got a great family. He's a great dad. But he just was not fit for the types of conflict that were needed in Canada 10 years ago. It's too late now. He only won by one vote against Maxime Bernier, and that split the party, split the electorate, split everything. And so Maxime Bernier is now the head of the People's Party, which has been written off as just pro-MAGA in Canada and doesn't seem to have much traction. They had a chance back in 2021, maybe 2022. Viva Fry ran for them in Montreal, but I think they're probably done. I actually met Maxime Bernier before that election and tried to convince him to embrace Bitcoin, which would have won him the entire election back then, the primary, we call it, right? The vote for leader. And because he had zero Bitcoin support and he lost by one vote. So, you don't think he would have gotten, there were 4,000 voters that are allowed to participate. It's 10 voters it's a little over 4,000. 10 votes per county, and so 10 delegates can go per county from the party. And so some of them are really competitive, like Alberta. It's hard, that guy who switched, it would be hard to be a delegate from his county. It'd be competitive. There'd be more than 10 people that wanted to be a delegate, so you'd have to get elected. But the urban ridings, where the Conservatives have no support at all, where a lot of the early Bitcoiners lived, would have obviously supported him, would have gone there and voted for the only person who had the capacity to go for Bitcoin back then. They chose not. So imagine I was one vote away in 2017 from creating a Bitcoin, pro-Bitcoin leadership decision in Canada, but it was for naught. And I warned him, this Maxime Bernier guy, that it was probably his only path to get there. And I had a really great trick. It was just take donations in Bitcoin, and he goes, but no, that's illegal. They're going to get mad at me. And I said, that's exactly the point. Just don't even take the money. Just say you're going to take it and they'll freak out. And then all the Bitcoiners will come to support you and help you. All you have to do is defend people's right to give you $20 in Bitcoin, and you'll get more Bitcoin than you'll know what to do with. And you'll be the prime minister of the country. And he chose, no, maybe later, maybe I'll do that when I'm in the general election. Didn't work out for him. So I actually got to sit down and I saw him on the street having a burger last year in Montreal. Montreal's filled with these little patios. And hey, Max, he was a good old friend of mine. So we sat down. I told him again, I said, Max, you remember you had a chance. I know. So there you go. That's what's going on. Now, speaking of election interference on the part of Mark Carney and creating a majority government where, he only got, I think he got like 43% of the vote, and the Conservatives got 41% of the vote. And so pretty split decision, pretty close in all. But what we've seen since, by taking this gerrymandered way of getting to majority, this backroom deal, transactional way of getting to a mandate, and no Albertan elected this guy to do that. And there's even a bit more shadiness where this Alberta guy had already said he was quitting. So he'd stopped coming to Parliament, and they were going to do a by-election. But at last minute, when he was offered this deal by Carney, he says, wait a minute, I don't quit. I'm fine. I want to do this. So he was given a cabinet position and all this stuff. So that's what enticed him over. But that's the kind of election interference you should expect, because, of course, these institutions around fiat currencies and fiat countries and the dying system, the system that we're watching die before our eyes, can't possibly prosecute a fair election because they'll lose. And they're doing the same now in Europe. Von der Leyen and some German court has come out and asked X to hand over Hungarian election data for researchers, experts. And indeed, weeks before the vote, they're trying to set up another Romania, according to the Islander. If they try to soft coup Hungary's election and fail, every populist in Europe learns Brussels is even weaker than it looks. The EU collapses either way. And indeed, we're starting to understand the physics here. This is the physics I'm talking about. This is the Streisand effect, otherwise known as the Newton's third law, equal and opposite reactions. When you create these storms, you end up reaping what you sow. It comes back to you in many ways. We've seen this throughout history. And so von der Leyen and her helmet hair, and what they're going for here, this is the German court, Politico Europe, a court in Germany, yesterday ordered Elon Musk's social media site X to hand over data related to the upcoming election in Hungary to researchers for scrutiny. Mike Ben says insanity. Where the hell is our U.S. ambassador? This is an American company operating lawfully and with the consent of the Hungarian government, and a foreign third-party government who wants to rig Hungary's election is prying open X to try to do it. Will our State Department fight for X? I believe they will, and I believe you'll see a lot of stuff happening in Hungary. And my prediction is they're going to continue to try to steal. They're going to continue to try to steal it. But they'll be caught, and we'll find out what the repercussions of that are, but that's as far as I can predict out. They will be caught with all of the stealing, as they have already been. But you can see their duplicitous behavior in a lot of institutions, right? We saw it yesterday, I don't know if you caught it, but Lagarde has quit. So Lagarde is no longer going to be the ECB chair, which is a shame. You know, we've loved Lagarde so far. But she has some kind of 8-year mandate, but I believe is only through 6 years of it. So here she's going to leave early. We don't know exactly when, but we know why. And the Telegraph writes it here. Lagarde to leave ECB early to prevent Le Pen from picking successor. Quitting before French election allows Emmanuel Macron to influence the new appointment. Collingwood says, remember how Donald Trump was destroying the foundations of sound monetary policy by pressuring the Fed to lower interest rates, thus bringing into question central bank independence. So these are Newtonian physics, guys, right? This stuff happens, and you end up getting a boomerang effect. Remember, the press is hysteria. So what's going on to be the response of the president of one Eurozone nation cooking up a scheme with the French ECB president for her to resign early to prevent the current French opposition from having a say in who will be the next ECB president in the event that they will win the next French presidential election? Doesn't that maybe impinge on central bank independence just a touch? Or will Macron get a pass like he did when he ruthlessly and violently put down the Gilets jaunes democratic protests, or when he threatened to cut off British electricity over a fishing dispute, or when he engaged in anti-vax rhetoric to try to rubbish the AstraZeneca vaccine? I think we know the answer. If you're a member of the club, it's all okay, because anything you do is by definition protecting our democracy from those who might want to take our democracy away from us. And another thing, the French have shown yet again that they should be disqualified from ever holding office at an international or supranational institution. Such positions call for independence, but they always remain agents of the French national interests, and the French establishment sees them. Intolerable. But it's all of these institutions that are coming apart, right? Even go back to Hungary for a second. You've got the election interferer in chief here, Hillary Clinton. We told you to pay attention to her and slithering out of her little hole. So here, looking very witch-like, right? She's getting the whole witch vibe going on. If I were an average Hungarian, she says, my attitude would be, I want to be electing someone who's for Hungary, not someone who's a puppet of Trump. Orban has been in politics since 1998 and has been prime minister since 2010. So, of course, completely stupid. And indeed, you're going to see Rubio, who has made this pact with Hungary. I think you're going to see this same cabal, the same Epstein institution people like Hillary Clinton continue to try to influence events in Europe. But again, just like we saw from the X getting involved and subpoenaed by Germany about the election in Hungary, just like we see the election interference here, equal and opposite reactions are the likely outcome here. You're going to see Newtonian physics in action, Streisand effect, if you will. She also, I don't know, this looks like an old video. but people are talking about it today. She's also on the white thing, of course, right? So she's doing these media appearances, but this one's flowing today. Hillary Clinton is receiving massive backlash after straight up admitting Democrats are targeting white Christian males because they are a threat. They aren't even hiding it. And she says they're just doing so much damage. And of course, you can see if it's not bad enough that the Canadian military is doing French Foreign Legion stuff and going to create a visa to bring in a new military in order to, who knows, do what to Canadians. It's also happening in New Zealand, another one of these sludge people countries. So this is some notes from them here. I think this is New Zealand. Here, I remember when our own military was telling us troops that evangelical Christians and Catholics were extremists. Yeah, it's New Zealand. Disturbing. New Zealand's military spent 2025 training soldiers to eliminate a fictional Christian group using a map that mirrors their own country. So indeed, this stuff is happening, but people are noticing. And indeed, we're noticing exactly how all of this stuff functions and operates. We've seen it all under the hood now. We've seen from the Epstein files, the empire above Epstein. We have seen that there is absolutely something like the deep state, and it can't be unseen once it's seen. And the Nixon stuff is also coming into view because of that. Nixon, of course, related to the Kennedy assassination. The Kennedy assassination, too messy. And since then, we've seen that you can have these operations to take down leaders that don't conform to these processes through their deep state actions. Luckily, Glenn Beck has been talking about it for a while. Bob Woodward was a deep state operative. Remember what, what's his name? Bill Murray, right? Bill Murray, when he was on Joe Rogan, said when he read the biography of John Belushi, right? So John Belushi, a good friend of Bill Murray, they moved to New York together. Of course, Bill Murray and what's his name moved to New York City together. They were Chicago comedians, but what's his name? Belushi was from another small town near Chicago. And the other person from that small town was Bob Woodward. And so Bob Woodward, after Belushi died, Bob Woodward wrote the biography. And so Bill Murray, who was a great friend of John Belushi, or Jim Belushi, or whichever the one died, picked up the biography. And within 2 seconds, Bill Murray, of reading Bob Woodward's biography on Belushi, Bill Murray said, "Oh my God, Watergate was a scam. They totally stole the election from Nixon. Or they stole the presidency from Nixon. It was a deep state plot." And so Bill Murray had that figured out right there, just from Bob Woodward's appearance. Now, remember, Bob Woodward's first story, his first story as a journalist, was the Watergate break-in. Before that, he worked as a cultural attaché at an embassy, the typical type of deep state position that gives folks that kind of access. So here, Glenn Beck saying, former policy assistant to President Nixon, Monica Crowley, explains how new documents reveal that the military spy ring tried to sabotage Nixon. So here, I'll redo the thing so you can hear the audio.
Give us what the documents revealed that maybe the public didn't know before.
Yes. So when Nixon becomes president, he understands what Eisenhower was warning about. So he decides that he is going to consolidate all foreign policy and national security decision-making in the hands of two people, he and his national security advisor at the time, Henry Kissinger, who we later learned was a deep state operative. Okay, so Nixon is getting inputs from one man who he really trusted, who perhaps he should not have. All right, that creates the environment where he is excluding the military. his own State Department, his own Secretary of State, the CIA, they're all going crazy, Glenn, because he is keeping all of the secrets to himself. The opening to China, détente with the Soviet Union, shuttle diplomacy in the Middle East, all of these huge, peaceful foreign policy initiatives he and Kissinger are keeping close to the vest. That then gives rise to this military spy ring that pops up in the White House to spy on Nixon and Kissinger, rifling through their papers when they go home. You know, when Nixon goes upstairs to go to bed, they come in the middle of the night in the White House, in the Oval Office, in Kissinger's office, in the White House. They're rifling through their papers. They're examining their telephones, everything possible to spy on Nixon. Does that sound familiar? How they spied on President Trump. Yes, because they were all freaking out. The deep state flipped out that they were being excluded. They had no idea what the president was planning, the discussions he was having. And so ultimately, Glenn, and this is what these new papers show, the more Admiral Moore, General Radfield at the time created this military spy ring to spy on Nixon. Yeah. And you know who was a key member of it? Was one Bob Woodward, who was a naval intelligence officer who was read in on this military spy ring, and then through the CIA's Mockingbird media program was planted as a, quote, journalist at the Washington Post, being fed all of the deep state plans to throw it on the front page of the Washington Post to bring down a president.
Wow, I had not heard that. That is shocking.
Now, we've known this for a while, and you can see why you can, like we see in the comments here, CB Van says the decade delay allowed Nixon to wise up to the plan. Well, we're all getting wise to the plan. I think Trump's getting wise to the plan. If you see what happened in South Korea, for example, right? Remember Yoon Suk Yeol, the former the former prime minister of South Korea. He's now been found guilty of insurrection. And we see here, this is a reminder of the stakes of the game. If you cross the Rubicon, you can't turn back. You can even pause and wait. You have to carry on. Bolsonaro is learning this costly lesson in Korea. They're learning it as well. Christian Haynes adds this, the tragic story of Yoon Suk Yeol is a very poignant reminder of what awaits those who cross the Rubicon and lose faith after the fact. Everyone who knows the full story of what happened to South Korea over the last few years understands the left are the true villains here as usual. But Yoon acted without a plan, crossed a point of no return, hesitated, and then tried to retreat when it was far too late. And now he could spend the rest of his life in prison while the very leftists who were implicitly subverting the country during his presidency get to explicitly subvert it with total impunity. Politics is not a game. In its most intense moments, it truly is a matter of life and death. While it is likely inevitable that virtually all parliamentary systems will eventually implode, if you try to tear the facade off a broken system and fail to do so, you will be utterly destroyed. And all of it will be retroactively justified because you'll be cast the villain in a story written by the winning side. So remember, he didn't have a plan, right? He didn't have a plan. And this is coming. I mean, look at the plan the Democrats have, right? James Carville saying it straight up. If the Democrats win the presidency, the Senate, and the House in 2028, they're just going to have to unilaterally add Puerto Rico and the District of Columbia states if you want to save democracy. The only way to save democracy is to lock in our powers so that America is forever a one-party state. So when you consider what they're saying, right, and you see, right, yesterday we had another one of these disinformation campaigns about the Epstein files. And of course, the plan, as I see it, the plan that I believe has been instituted for a number of years now, the plan that is not what Yoon Suk Yeol used in South Korea is kayfabe. It is get people to be interested in the Epstein files. And of course, yesterday, Trump has shown how successful this is. Ted Lieu, all right, Ted Lieu came out and had this crazy speech, raping and all of this stuff. The goal is, of course, to create the public's mind that Donald Trump is a pedal biker. The left is running one of the biggest disinformation campaigns of our lifetime. You know, there isn't any proof at all Trump ever did any of this, and they don't care. The ends justify the means. Just so you all know, he made the exact same speech years ago when Trump was the candidate. The top story in X today is Ted Lieu says Jeffrey Epstein, the full Jeffrey Epstein shows Trump with the kids. Here's Ted Lieu making the same claim in 2024, citing a false and debunked lawsuit from 2016. All Democrats do is lie. They'll never stop because they've never been held accountable. And here, indeed, Will Chamberlain says it's just hoax after hoax after hoax. There's been an entirety of our politics for the last 16 months. That's been the entirety of our politics for the last 16 months. Elon is a Nazi, Maryland man hoax, the millions will die in Africa hoax, the Rene Good and Alex Pretty were executed hoaxes, the Gaza genocide hoax, the boots on the ground in Iran hoax, the ICE detained a 5-year-old hoax, and now the Trump is a pedal biker hoax. This is all Democrats and their media apparatchiks do when out of power. Every day they take another shot at Trump and MAGA with whatever weapons are available to them. But people have caught on. This thing went nowhere yesterday. I mean, people mostly just sharing Ted Lieu's disgusting personal attacks and, you know, kind of saying, look what they're doing. But the stakes are known, right? Not only are the stakes known, we've become so much wiser to the patterns. Years ago, this might have actually been a few days of a scandal. But of course, Ted Lieu's thing yesterday isn't going to go further than today. It's already out of anyone's consciousness. It's just a low-grade, stupid person complaining in his terrible, whatever that accent he has is. It's just awful. And so him trying in his strange way to create this story just shows again why his weakness won't produce results, but also it underlines that we've learned the tricks. We've seen the architecture of deceit and we know how to get around it. You know, even the op they're trying to run with the James Tallarico thing in Texas, right? Brian Stelter coming out, whether you believe Colbert's account of what happened or the CBS statement, the big picture story is the same. Pressure from Trump's FCC is influencing decisions at broadcast TV networks. And Dana Loesch says, Brian, are you telling me that Trump, not FDR, signed the 1934 Communications Act? So I'll tell you why that's funny in a second. But David Marcus says it even better here. The FCC didn't force Colbert to lie to his audience by pretending he was some big hero being silenced by Trump. So the story is, Tallarico is because of the FCC, because of broadcast. If he's going on Colbert, Colbert has to put a Republican on. And especially if he's going to bring on both Jasmine Crockett, who's running against Tallarico in Texas for the nomination for senator. So because of this, because there's the equal time thing, they didn't put Crockett on and they didn't put a Republican on. So he went around and put it on YouTube because the rules don't apply on YouTube. But again, we see the tricks, right? Brian Stelter saying that Trump's FCC is influencing decisions at broadcast TV networks. David Marcus says, and he does remember the Norm Macdonald joke? When Norm Macdonald went with Jerry Seinfeld and, comedians in cars going for coffee or whatever that show is. And he has just one of the funniest jokes you'll ever hear. Norm Macdonald talks about someone and they had a conversation about Bill Cosby. And so they're talking about Bill Cosby and all the legal trouble he got into. And it was Patton Oswalt that he's talking about. And Patton Oswalt said, you know what the worst part is? The worst part is it's the hypocrisy, right? And then so Norm Macdonald says, but I disagreed with that. And so Jerry Seinfeld understands he's setting up a joke. So Jerry said, oh, you disagreed with that, right? So he plays along and he gets suckered in. He goes, oh, you disagreed with that. And Norm Macdonald says, yeah. I didn't think the hypocrisy was big. I thought it was the raping and the drugging. is the raping and the drugging was the worst part. The hypocrisy, I don't know. And it's kind of the same thing here. David Marcus saying the FCC didn't force Colbert to lie to his audience by pretending he was some big hero silenced by Trump. I'd say that's the big picture, the lying. The lying is the big picture, Stelter. But of course, Brian Stelter has no aura, no riz, no capacity whatsoever to persuade people. They fired him for a reason. He belongs in the Gutierrez level of persuasion. A big zero. It doesn't work. He remains a zero. And of course, everyone understood this op from the beginning. Here, CBS lawyers told Stephen Colbert that he couldn't have Texas Democrat Senator candidate Tallarico on his show, and he certainly couldn't talk about the act of censorship either. He did both anyway, getting around the order by posting the interview on YouTube in a move. This is from Vox. In a move that has since gone viral, and Mike Solana says this didn't happen, and of course Mike Solana is correct. And here, this is what is actually funny, and this is more now where I think we're going to get into the fun version of Newtonian third law, equal and opposite reactions. So this is what happened. The funnier part of the story is that Tallarico actually had, so the whole thing was fundraising, right? Everyone picked up on that. So this turned out to be a fundraising performance by two actors. Tallarico here, many people noticing here bragging, our campaign raised $2.5 million because the FCC banned our Colbert interview. Caitlin saying, man, this is some of the shadiest shit I have ever seen in Democrat politics. But because we know the tricks, because we see them, the funny part here is that Tallarico did this to Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett, of course, didn't get to benefit from this, and he's running against her. So here, Bon Chi says, you created a hoax to screw over and silence a black woman, James. And a lot of people picking up on it. The Democrats rigging a primary to install a white guy over a black woman is the most Democrat shit ever. And so I think what's going to happen is Jasmine Crockett, of course, is going to have to fight against this now. And I think she's going to be good at this. I think that Jasmine Crockett, she has skills. She's not a zero. And watching a white guy have the opportunity to win the very seat she's going for, I think brings us to one of my predictions that I've been making for a very long time, which is that Donald Trump will win the black vote in America. Now, I think the Democrats will be successful in stealing the Senate nomination for Tallarico from Jasmine Crockett. However, you're going to have to deal with the Newtonian physics, the equal and opposite reaction. I don't think she's going to go quiet. I don't think she's like Bernie Sanders. I think they're Bernie Sandersing her, but she's not going to behave like Bernie Sanders. You remember how Trump used to call for Bernie Sanders to grow a pair and admit what happened back in 2016? And of course, he never did, because whatever they have on him was enough to keep him silent. But the equal and opposite reaction thing will work this time, because I do think Trump is making inroads. We saw it about to break in the 2020 election. And of course, here he is yesterday with, what's her name? Nicki Minaj, mother, I guess. So I think he's going to have a chance, and I'll play the audio here, because, stuff like this. Stop sharing. I don't know why I was sharing twice and all this stupid shit. So I think you're going to see big changes in how Trump is able to communicate with the African American vote in America. I think he's going to do even better, and I think eventually he is going to win this vote. And it's.
I don't want any mistakes. Come on in. Yes, you can. So nice. I like her. Please.
I like him too. One thing I like about him, he keeps it real, just like Grandma. I appreciate that, because I can trust him, because he tells exactly how he feels and what he thinks. Thank God for this president. I am filled, my cup runneth over. Because he allowed his constituents, his people, to come to my house to interview me, to talk about the murder of my grandson. It seemed like nobody cared. I'm an advocate for murder. I marched, I rallied, I pulled out other families in the District of Columbia that had murders and did not have answers. Ooh. We marched and we rallied, and nobody heard me, Democrats. Get mad at me. Until this Republican sent his constituents, his people out there to interview me in my home. Have you ever heard of a thing? Then they invited me twice before Congress to testify for the beautiful bill that's going to change crime in the district. If you kill somebody, okay, you take a life, you do life. Just that simple. If you do a harsh crime, you do harsh time. Just that simple. And then we need National Guard, and which we did years ago. He brought it on. I love him. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say about that racist stuff. And don't be looking at me on the news hating on me because I'm standing up for somebody that deserves to be standing up for. Get off the man's back. Let him do his job. He's doing the right thing. Back up off of him. And Grandma said it.
So I've been making this prediction for a long time now. I think it's going to work because there is a plan. I think what she mentioned here about National Guard, of course, you know, that's part of the plan, has been for a while. And you can see already that the media literacy, the understanding of these systems is getting so strong amongst the people who are awakening to all of the mischief and the deception and the trouble. And when you add all of these things up, right, we're understanding more and more just how corrupted the system is, just how much of a criminal enterprise has been lording over us all of these times. And, you know, we're finally getting somewhere when it comes to understanding just how bad it is, right? When you want to think of it as a plan, when you want to think of it as justice piece as a plan, and you want to think about what's going on with the Epstein files and the kayfabe that Trump used, of course, here's just a perfect example, right? He's not a prince anymore. Andrew Mountbatten was actually arrested. It's actually starting to happen, just like we heard years ago. And Trump has been talking about this for a long time, right? This is Trump here. I'm not sure this will come through the audio. I have to do this stupid thing where I stop it again and reshare it. But here he is many years ago talking specifically about this, right?
You raised the question of Jeffrey Epstein in your remarks about in the Q&A.
Well, I think he's got a problem. I mean,
what do you think the problem will be?
I don't know, but that island was really a cesspool. There's no question about it. Just ask Prince Andrew. He'll tell you about it.
You raised the question of Jeffrey Epstein in your remarks about.
So indeed, what you see here is what people have been telling you was the plan. It was all about conjuring interest in the story. This is a consistent version of the story since 2015. You can see from this consistent version of the story since 2015 that there is an effort, of course, to create the necessary conditions to lure people in, to get people's attention, to get people to pay attention to the story. Hasn't changed his tune since 2015. Now, in a lot of the, people who talk about trusting the plan, the trust the plan portion here was always that you would see widespread interest in this story. And once people started following the breadcrumbs, that they would themselves awaken. And that this is a big part of what's going on, and people understanding that, of course, there's there's people that will always hate Trump, and he's up against all kinds of mischief and all kinds of attempts. But unlike the South Korean fella, Trump does have a plan. And the plan looks consistent. It looks like it's working. And not only does it look like it's working, it's caused people who are following it to become even more aware. I mean, even look at this thing with Nick Fuentes, right? Nick Fuentes tells his followers not to vote in the midterms so the GOP gets wiped out. Trump gets impeached and indicted, and then we get a Nazi to run in 2028. And that's what Nick Fuentes is seeing. But people are pointing out Nick ushered people into the Capitol on January 6th and was never charged, and then suddenly has his show where he tells white men to hate women and right-wingers to not vote for Trump go viral. If you don't see the op, you're either a moron or spiritually sick indeed. The op that's out there, right, will, of course, continue to draw people in, continue to get people interested, but we're getting way more savvy about how this stuff works. And in the end, as people are arguing about this stuff, as people are following the Epstein stuff, remember, Trump doesn't really have to do much more than just keep dropping this information bit by bit. It's leading already to 9/11. You're going to see 9/11 stuff next. That was all deliberately withheld so that curiosity in those particular files become cultivated, become real. People are prepared now to hear what is going on there. Of course, the Epstein painting of George Bush remains, highly questionable. The one of him sitting like a little kid with the paper airplane and the two towers, continuing to hear about this stuff. So what Trump has from here, right, is a huge base that's understanding how this stuff works to the depths of their knowledge of deep state ops, psychological operations. Remember, World War III is a psychological war, also an economic war. So as all of this psychological stuff is being wrapped up in the question of voter ID, of Epstein files, intrigue and interest, and all the cultivation he's done with that, on the other end, Trump is managing and going after the economic question. And of course, in the end, just like James Carville said many years ago, it's the economy, stupid. Here, just in U.S. housing market reaches most unaffordable level in history. Aaron McIntyre says this is the future of American politics, and any pundit who tells you otherwise is an idiot. So what Aaron McIntyre is actually saying here, I think, is that all of this other stuff might be important. Voter ID, black people voting for Trump, all that stuff might be important. But the most important thing and the most persuasive thing and the thing that will actually get the most votes is the economy and fixing housing in particular. And so here, many people picking up on this, the only way for housing to magically become affordable is for home prices to drop 30 to 40% across the board. Trump cannot avoid this. Everything is so wildly overpriced, and I'm tired of people pretending it's not. So that's one solution to lower the price of housing through a crash in the market. But there's another solution out there as well, which is to let the housing prices inflate so that psychologically no one's losing and there's just more money available. But how can you just play around with inflation like that, right? Well, the good news is the economic stewards of the fiat destruction also understand that the game is changing. And here you've got BlackRock releasing a new commercial on how inflation is driving Bitcoin adoption. Let me know if the audio is coming through on this. So I don't.
Bitcoin adoption has grown significantly since it was created over 15 years ago. It's the world's leading and most widely adopted cryptocurrency, and it's maintained its dominance even as the number of digital assets has grown to over 20,000. So what's driving Bitcoin's growth? Well, first, the continued digital transformation of the global economy. It's changing the world of finance, and with that, creating a growing interest in digital assets and new use cases for Bitcoin. Second, younger generations are more likely to be considered digital natives, resulting in higher rates of Bitcoin adoption. And lastly, certain global trends such as rising inflation and geopolitical divisions have increased Bitcoin's appeal as a scarce asset that exists independently of any one country or central bank. In parallel to the three aspects driving Bitcoin adoption, we've also seen some shifts in the overall industry. In particular, there have been key developments in the infrastructure of the Bitcoin ecosystem, and the regulatory environment has and continues to evolve. Now, the
Okay, the audio was coming through.
combination of all of these factors has helped bring us to this moment, the availability of Bitcoin ETFs, which are helping make Bitcoin more accessible to investors. For more information, visit iShares.com.
Now, you know, in the end, as the ETF, of course, they're hawking their product, but they're hawking a worldview. And I've said many times that I believe we have to go through Wall Street first. It's a normal function. The idea of us running the Bitcoin revolution from a bunch of plebs holding Bitcoin was a nice thought. It was a fine thought in early Bitcoin. But COVID made me realize it doesn't matter. Not going to happen that way. The best we have, the best solution before us is to infect Wall Street and the energy industry with the Bitcoin virus in order that they start having our same alignment with Bitcoiners and try to accumulate Bitcoin. That provides us this opportunity to bifurcate the economy, go to bimetallism, inflate the dollar, use Bitcoin to sponge it up, which is exactly what the Mar-a-Lago Accords say is going to happen. Trump says explicitly that's what's going to happen. So that's a way you can get housing prices to go up. So the boomers will feel like they were getting enough money, but the money will become easier for people to get because we are going to fucking print like crazy. When Trump gets control of the Federal Reserve in May, he's going to be timed for the 250th anniversary of the United States. The entire, and you heard it on this show many times I said this, the first year is murky of Trump's administration because he's got to get all of these psychological operations going. He's got to get all of this stuff happening. He's got to go defund the NGO infrastructure of deceit, the architecture of deceit. He's got to go after those folks. Then he brings out the interest in the Epstein files to show how the deep state already functions. And now he's bringing in, as the chaos of all of this stuff is working its way through the system, he's going to pivot hard to the economy in time for the midterms, which is what I predicted from the beginning. You're going to see him get control of the Federal Reserve. They're going to print. Besant is going to go absolutely crazy with the print, and housing just won't be an important part of the system. Now, this is why it's encouraging that we're going to be able to win, because if you look at Besant and you look at Trump and you look at what they've got going on and their persuasion and the games they're playing and the psychological operations they're playing, and you compare it to what the sludge people have, right? That becomes the persuasion game going forward. And here's just to see what we're losing with Lagarde going out. I doubt they're going to be able to bring in anyone as good. But think about Besant, think about Trump, think about what they're doing with Bitcoin, think about BlackRock and all of these people. And now listen to Lagarde here talk about crypto and the euro from a couple of
balance sheet of the European Central Bank and the money that is on there now. And here it is. What I would like to show our viewers and ask the question about is, this is going over 8 trillion euros now. Mm-hmm. And isn't what you just told us about the cryptocurrencies, don't we see a gigantic bubble here on your balance sheet with the euro? And isn't this graph very nerve-wracking?
Well, I can tell you that there is 0 crypto assets in the balance sheet of the ECB.
That I know.
Point number one. Well, I just don't want any ambiguity about it.
Yeah.
But you have to think in terms of counterfactual. If we had not decided on March 18th, when we put together the pandemic emergency program and then subsequently increased the volume of commitment that we made to the European Union economies, we would be in a devastated situation. So I don't regret any of that move that we took on that day, which was 4 months into my job, to significantly increase the size of the balance sheet, because that's all we had. Yeah. Otherwise, the economy would have collapsed, and it would have been even accelerated by a financial crisis.
You had to do it. It was the COVID crisis. You say that's what we needed to do. But how do you get it?
It will come. It will come. In due course, yeah.
How?
In due course, it will come.
Yeah? No, but do you sleep at night when you see this?
Of course I have to sleep at night. and I have to worry every morning. Yeah.
The balance sheet of the European.
Now, just think of persuasion, okay? We don't care about the facts right now. It doesn't matter, right? Is she right? Who's right? What's going on? Forget about Epstein and everything and motivations and democracy and institutions. Just straight out look at persuasion. Look at her and this system and the bullets they have in their gun compared to what, is this going to help anyone's housing? Is this going to have any effect on making anyone richer? No, of course not. This is all just nonsense. This is all just to continue to buttress the old system of collateralized birth certificates, using soft money to fund soft governments and all of the mental illness that comes with that, right? So compare that to what the Trump boys said yesterday and just think about it, right? Think about what is more persuasive, what speaks to people more, and what you think is applicable. And, listen to her. She can't even talk. She can't even answer questions. Here's what the Trump family said yesterday.
I'm curious what you're trying to accomplish here, because it's not just a crypto conference. World Liberty is a crypto company, but you have CEOs from Goldman Sachs and big hedge fund managers. What's the goal?
I think we're trying to modernize finance. We're the most canceled people in the world in 2020, 2021. And it's really great to almost have this retribution where all of a sudden we start pushing an agenda. Our agenda was to modernize finance, to allow that to never, ever, ever happen to anybody again.
I'm curious what you're trying to accomplish here.
So exactly, they're talking about modernizing the rails so that there's no more debanking, so that there's no more people cut off from the system. And they're talking about having the chance to rebuild everything. And it's not like you have a bunch of people that are not doing well that want to preserve the system. Everyone who's doing poorly wants to change the system. So you can see right there that there's a ton of, there's a vacuum and a void, and there's people that want to fix it. And it gets even better, right? Here's an old video of Marco Rubio talking about sanctions and the US dollar. And he's more, he's not in the administration when he's talking about this, but he's talking about changing the system and the dollar's capacity to continue to be the backbone of the financial system. It can't be. So you have someone here admitting to something like bimetallism coming, and that America has to embrace it. And America understands this. So they understand they have to move and change, and that change has to have dividends for the people. It's got to be oriented on growth. That's why I believe that after we get past the Federal Reserve and Jerome Powell, and we create the circumstances where the Federal Reserve is again subordinate to Treasury, and we have the reinstitution of the constitutional American Republic, you're going to see the economy rip. And you're going to see it rip because there's going to be two monies. There's going to be one that will soak up the inflation, and the dollar is going to get inflated. And you've got folks like Rubio who are working towards this. You've got folks like Bessent who are working towards this. And you can already see Rubio paying huge dividends. Here he is, because part of this is making sure that your political sphere of influence, the one that still recognizes the political money of the US dollar, is completely within that sphere of influence, unimpeded and without others participating. That's the Dunroe Doctrine, of course, and we're seeing already that America is going to grow as a result. Here's the story that people are talking about from Axios: exclusive Rubio's secret squeeze on Raul Castro's Cuba. So this is the kind of leak that you see when you know that this is what's actually happening. So apparently Rubio has been holding secret talks with Raul Castro, who is the grandson and caretaker of Cuba's aging de facto dictator Raul Castro. And the U.S. puts unprecedented pressure on Havana's regime. Here we see the talks between Rubio and Castro, known as El Cangreo, the crab, are described as more discussions than negotiations, but they are a big deal because they show how much Trump and Rubio want a deal to normalize relations with Cuba. And here we see three, notably the Marco Rialto talks are described as friendly, and El Candreo has impressed U.S. officials. He's in charge of this. He's in charge of this like opportunity zone just south of Havana, where they were, having foreign direct investment and stuff like that. I'm not sure what they built there, but this is the kind of guy who has probably been going secretly to Bitcoin conferences and stuff like that over the years, or tech conferences anyway. Here, reality check and replicating what the U.S. sees as success so far in Venezuela will be a lot harder. The Castro family may stay in Cuba under deal with Trump, and Communist Party members are likely to remain in power in some fashion. I do believe that's the case. To be clear, Rubio is keenly aware and supportive of U.S. law that imposes the embargo on Cuba in return for a free Cuba. Trump is the decider of any deal in the U.S., and he hasn't decided yet. But I do believe this is what we can expect, that Cuba will indeed fall under the influence. All of this is going to create incredible opportunities for the United States. All of this is going to be packed into the 250th golden age optimism that will happen, and that will be kicked off genuinely by the Federal Reserve losing its influence over the United States, because, of course, the Federal Reserve was the way in which the deep state was able to pull levers and create incentives and manage its control. But America is, in a way that probably can't be, you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube kind of a way. It's not just Cuba, right? Of course, the Russian story, we covered it yesterday. Russia offers the $12 trillion deals in exchange for limiting sanctions. And that's from The Economist, so it's real. Things are moving quicker than people realize. Even 2 weeks ago, this headline would have seemed impossible to blackpilling deadweights who are overconfident but wrong about everything. And someone actually said yesterday, a Russian said, this is actually fake news. It's actually 14 trillion, not 12. It's bigger than that. And I believe that's true. I believe the bridge is going to be announced as part of the 250th anniversary that America will actually be physically connected to the other continent, which is just such a beautiful symbol, I think, in so many ways. And that itself will be persuasive about bridge building and the optimistic vision of the future that is completely possible and now very likely, as long as things continue in the way they are unfolding. So it's indeed why you can already see that the Ukraine situation is probably actually now finally coming to an end. Yesterday, we saw in all of the negotiations that are going on that Zelensky explodes. No time for all of this shit. He runs away from the deal yesterday, apparently, according to Zero Hedge, under intensifying U.S. pressure. Zelensky out. The masks are finally coming off as the pressure increases. At this point, my interest on what happens over there is basically zero. It's clear that they all want to fight each other. So I guess let them fight. True, but I do think it is going to come to an end, that you are going to get some form of movement over on these files, and that indeed you're going to see the good news stories continue to compound. You're going to see peace in Russia and Ukraine. You're going to see Russian and American rapprochement, financial ties. You're going to see Cuba, American rapprochement and financial ties. You're going to see all of this stuff around America's 250th. All of this, the print, the housing fix, all of this stuff, Trump on the actual sales pitch, not dealing with the mudslinging of the Epstein stuff. That stuff is now, like I said, mostly on autopilot. It's going to take care of itself. If you know what the plan is, the plan was always that Trump had to be above the mudslinging when the actual space drops begin. Because the president can't be out there calling for this person to be killed. Remember what I told you about Kennedy before he was named to Health and Human Services? I thought the right role for him was to be in the as the Attorney General, doing his daddy's old job. in order that you have an actual Democrat going after and imprisoning criminal Democrats. Looks like we're going to have enough Republicans to pop off in order to get the ball rolling on public executions. I think Bannon, sorry if anyone out there is still a Bannon fan. I've been looking for the op in it. I don't see it. I think Bannon really is just part of the Uniparty and somehow was corrupted. I do want to see a Republican drop a Republican first, just so that, and that's what, if you remember what Trump did when he brought back the death penalty in his first term, he went and blew away a Republican white nationalist first. I don't know about Republican, but he blew away a KKK guy first. We kind of got to do that stuff, I think. So there you go. So all of this leads us to political predictions. Again, like I said, I think you've got big changes happening in the African American community. I think the African Americans don't stand with ICE. Don't stand against ICE. I think they understand why there's trouble in employment markets because of all the foreigners and housing markets and inflation and all those things. No audio on Rubio. Okay, it was a short one anyway. No sound, no one. Thanks, guys. Pardon me. Don't know why sometimes it's like that. So I do think you're going to have a situation where there's enough good economic news, there's enough bad deep state news that Trump is going to have all the ammo he needs for a series of his typical presidential barnstorming comedy shows, for lack of a better word. And if Trump is back on the campaign trail, that's why this midterm election will be different than any other that we've seen, because normally the president's kind of busy. And I don't think Trump's going to be that busy, in the sense that I think he's got a plan. I think he's going to be campaigning hard in the midterms, which is something we're not used to seeing. And I think Trump, if he gets his real benefits, his real plan, which is the SAVE Act, which he's said many times he's going to get, I think if he gets the SAVE Act going, then it's a near guarantee that you're going to see this huge change. No audio on Rubio. Thanks, guys. Yeah, thanks for letting me know. But here is Based Mike Lee talking about the only political fight I think that matters in the United States right now, which is the voter ID thing and Tune. And again, isn't it perfect that Trump is the action president, and that we are creating a new economy that is about action and not fake money and talking and fiat being words and blah, 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 that we're actually trying to fix the American system. It's like a real simulation wink that the zombie filibuster for the zombie money is going to be destroyed by the active filibuster of forcing people to talk. So here's what we found out and what I think is going to happen. And indeed, I think you're going to get it.
Now seems like the only time for Republicans to step up and do something.
Yeah, first of all, the fact that we haven't done something in a while, the fact that it would require a fair amount of work and that we don't know exactly what curveballs the Democrats might try to throw at us when we do this isn't a good reason not to do it. In fact, Kayleigh, when you look at how important this is, the fact that we're looking at somewhere between 80 and 85% of all Americans support this, the fact that this may well be necessary in order for us to preserve the majority that the Republican Party holds in the Senate and in the House. When you look at the fact that the American people want this done, this is the most important thing that we could do. And so, look, it may take a while. I expect that it probably would take a few weeks. It would be far worth the investment, and I believe we could get it passed. What we do know is that if we don't try, it won't happen, and it won't pass. We've got to try this, Kayleigh. The American people demand it.
And they do, and I think they're going to get it. I think they're going to get it. I think they're going to get what they want, and I think we're moving to this new system, and it looks like America, if it can fix its own political situation over the summer, if it can fix all of that, it's already created enough change internationally that the world will be waiting for America to lead this new system, as it already is, but explicitly lead it past. You've even got UAE, for example, here. According to Dr. B, probably nothing, using the great bow-tied bull meme. Here, Bitcoin Magazine reporting UAE has so far mined 453.6 million US trash tokens worth of Bitcoin through their partners, Citadel, per Arkham. They're mining and mining and mining, and it looks like the world is changing with every Bitcoin they find. Indeed. Things are going great, everyone. We're having a good time. Let's see what folks are saying in the chat. Let me try something with the chat. Maybe this will work better. I'm going to try something right now. Well, it didn't work. I was going to try and share the screen and just the comments, but I can't get the video out, and it takes up all the room, so I can't really share the comments. I'll just read them. Stelter is not looks maxing. Oh, he's not looks maxing. No. This is zero looks maxing going on. The raping was the worst part. Yeah, the raping and the drugging. Yeah. Why am I all breaking up here all of a sudden? Yeah, the raping and the drugging were indeed the worst part. I'm glad you guys like that joke. Let me go back here. Beautiful time to be alive. Donald Trump is Jesus Christ. It sure is. Hillary's hand movements and finger wagging beyond irritating. Yeah, indeed. Escape the Matrix says the noticing will continue. Indeed. Chef Zero says green highlights her in her very witch suit. There you go. Steal your face. They will if you let them. Oh my goodness. That's what's going on. As a Florida boy on a dirt road, my introduction to Quebec was Dino Bravo. Indeed, T-Dog Yo Yo Yo. In case you didn't know, and I think you should, that Quebec was one of the great incubators of professional wrestling. That's one of the reasons why I know a lot about wrestling. Quebec was always a big stop. It was a guaranteed sellout because it fit. It was part of the because wrestling was regional, right? And when Hulk Hogan went to wrestle out of New York because the WWF was from Connecticut, and it had the exclusive deal with Madison Square Garden, it also applied to Quebec. Quebec was part of the WWF region. That's why Andre the Giant lived in Montreal. He was a local Montreal guy. He owned a restaurant in Montreal, actually. And so we were really early. And to this day, there's a lot of wrestling, like junior clubs, like what you would find in Florida. And this is a big mystery for people. They don't understand how American, because Quebecers are heritage Americans. They're original Americans. They have been original Americans from the beginning. They're not like Canadians. They're original, got there at the same time as Mayflower people, earlier than the Mayflower, and have been settling that area. And, while Catholic and a little socialistic in many of their ways, they still have an American aesthetic for things. They're inventors, the snowmobile, the jet ski. A lot of this stuff comes from Quebec. The tank treads, right? That whole thing's from the snowmobile. So the Montreal was a huge industrial center because the superhighway that is the St. Lawrence River for ships ended at Montreal. And so Montreal became one of the world's leading manufacturers of railway parts, tracks, everything, the wood you need to put in for the rail cars, everything used to get made in Montreal. Montreal was like Detroit, what Detroit became for cars later. Montreal was that for trains. And because everything came out of Montreal, the train tracks and everything came out. So Quebec is very much like America in many of the things that are quintessentially American. If a French person comes to Quebec, they think of it as the Wild West. Like to a French person's aesthetic, Quebec seems extreme America, and wrestling would be a great example of why. You can go down a street, and it's happened to me. I've gone walking down a street in some neighborhood in Montreal, and boom, there's a wrestling promotion going on. They do a little bit of the Mexicans are into the wrestling too. Across Quebec, you can find rodeo. Did you know there's like cowboy hat rodeo stuff in Quebec? In my little town, our agricultural fair is just filled with French Canadian cowboys, literal cowboys. They wear the hat, the boots, and not as a costume, not as an ironic outfit. That's going out in meeting clothes because they have a farm. And so they wear that kind of stuff. People don't realize that about Quebec, that it is in many ways very typically American, and it is the most self-conscious and self-aware of all American states about what they are as Americans. So it's one of the reasons why I'm so bullish on Quebec. Now, Canadians are some of the stupidest people in the world, for sure. And for a lot of them, I don't care for them, I'll be honest. I had tremendous culture shock moving to the province of Ontario as a young man. Far less culture shock when I moved to the United States, and not even close, actually. Now, I only lived in northeastern United States, Brooklyn being very similar to Montreal, and New England being very similar and connected to the part of Quebec I grew up in. But that's personally me. I get along great with a lot of Canadians. It's not everyone, but a lot has changed there. And they really are, like pound for sludge, right? Pound for pound measured in sludge. They got a lot in Canada. Pound for pound, sludge for sludge. It's pretty bad. That's why I always say that the stupidest people in the world. I believe that. I believe they are the dumbest people on earth. There's no one dumber than them. New Zealanders, I always caveat that with New Zealand. They might be. The Quebecers, also a little bit like the Shire. Very dumb in a lot of ways, but it is like the Shire. They don't really understand what's happening in the world because it's so great in Quebec. They just don't know. They don't know what happened to the planet. They think and are so far behind in many ways because they just don't understand. But because it's the Shire, it's worth saving, and it can be saved. And I don't want them to have to know about all this other stuff in the world. I'm glad that they'll be able to snap back into high trust society. A lot less rebuilding will need to be done in Quebec than will need to be done in the United States, for example. I think the golden age will be felt in Quebec almost instantly because they'll align with power. Remember, the sludge people, the ones who are trying to convince, align naturally with power. Whatever system gives them benefit, they're just going to adopt the ideas, aesthetic, and outcomes that are told to them by those in power. And so you don't really have to convince Quebecers. You have to become financially capable, and they'll align with you. And that is what's going to happen between the United States. As weird as this sounds, I predict eventually, within our lifetime, and maybe even within just a few years, they'll be building actual statues to Donald Trump in Quebec. I know that sounds crazy because they hate him. But I believe he will be understood very quickly as the liberator of Quebec, the same Quebec that suffered a dramatic loss to the British 10 years before the American Revolution got started, 13 years before the American Revolution got started, and is the reason for which Quebec was not able to participate in the American Revolution because they already had garrisons all over them, and they were already a suppressed, colonized people, and so didn't have the freedom of movement in order to come down and participate in the American Revolution the way other places might have. That's why to this day, there is as I understand it, a unilateral right for Quebec to enter the United States. In the Federalist Papers, it was sort of alluded to because people understood they didn't have freedom of choice to join the revolution back then because of the disproportionate size of the British military occupying the state, because they'd already decided not to convert them or brainwash them or teach them English. They just had to deal with the infrastructure the French Canadians controlled and continue to control. So, my prediction is statues coming. So there you go. I'm going to wait for Hank for a minute, see if there's some more comments here from folks. What are people saying? Jazzy Crockett, Stelter is not look smacking yet. Blacks used to be Republicans before FDR. Grandmas are powerful. Lance says, I knew Nick Fuentes was a schmuck. Who funds Fuentes? Indeed. No sound. Gonna hold you to that rather surprising prediction. President Trump statue. You got it. Yeah, you got it. There you go. You got it. I enjoy when you do your Brian Stelter voice. It cracks me up every time. You got it, man. There's Hank. I see him in there. I wonder if he's ever heard my Brian Stelter.
I heard you say my name. I've been summoned like Beetlejuice. Welcome. How are you this morning, Nolan?
Hank. There you go. You know, my kids, they really treat the jinx game like it's real rules, right?
Yeah.
And they jinxed each other the other day, and they both actually went for it, and they were begging me to de-jinx them. So it was pretty great, you know.
As a parent, I think you just let them jinx for maybe the whole day. Give yourself a break, maybe just for the day, you know.
Yeah. I let them suffer, each of them, for about 10 minutes while they tried to make their case about who I should de-jinx first. And,
how did they make their case? Can't you not talk? Were they writing it down? Oh, they were. They were pantomiming the whole thing. Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, it wasn't 10 minutes. I should say, you know, a couple of seconds. So 10 minutes
still.
of time would be too much, you know.
Well, the only thing that sounds like a better time than that was probably what was happening at the Great Awakening this morning and what we all chatting about.
Very good time indeed. So we began discussing the situation in Europe with the, you know, you had a few people. So Germany saying they're going to dox everyone on the internet. The Australia thing, you can't use the internet as an anonymous person. I also brought up the point on Macron. A lot of people talking about Macron today when he said freedom of speech is bullshit. Now, I defended Macron a little bit in the sense that he was talking about algorithms, which is true, right? That the algorithm, you know, if you don't know who's guiding you, you know, it's an important factor. So, you know, a lot of people saying he doesn't believe in freedom of speech. That's not exactly what he said. He said it's freedom of speech is bullshit because of algorithms. But I didn't let him off the hook because indeed what he's actually talking about is, you know, they've had the monopoly over education in France for kids' whole lifetimes. They have them to their own devices for 12 straight years. And they can't teach people to deal with opposing points of view over those 12 years of the monopoly over education. Like, give me a break. So you can make the point about the algorithms, but you can't make that point if you're going to abdicate education so completely. Like, imagine admitting that the people you educated are too stupid in order to handle competing points of view. So, you know, I went into education after that. Of course, we see now there's something like 40-something% of college grads can't get a job because they're just not teaching people the right skills. And even then, that universities, you know, they really were in the past time there for the top 10% of IQs. It wasn't something that was supposed to be a passport to a better life for everybody. It had its roles, and there's other jobs and all these kinds of things. So, and in the end, what it's created is all these people with degrees. And then I used a story about Mark Carney, which is, you know, leading on the world stage, but there's the world stage is just all these unemployed people that are overeducated. There isn't really a world stage. Nobody else cares about his coalition. Completely ridiculous. So, from there,
a lot of knuckleheads out there today. I hate to say it. Not the ones that watch and rocks them. These people are choosing to be informed. So clearly our audience is the exception. To give you a quick example, I went on a hike here in San Francisco the other day. And I don't know if you know this, they have a hard time making bear-proof garbage cans. And the reason is, I found out, is there's too much overlap between the dumbest humans and the smartest bears. So if they make them too complicated, like these dumb idiot people are like, I can't get it open. And I saw one of these traps and I'm like, oh, I get it. Because you have to like stick your hand and push in. And I saw a video of like a tourist like really struggling with it. And I didn't realize there was such an overlap between dumb people and smart bears. So there you go.
It's a hard target to hit. You know,
it is.
At what point can the bear not figure it out? I get it. It's
they must be watching rocks on TV, those bears, because they're staying informed better than some of the humans out there. And I know they'll be watching us today because you and I got a lot to talk about.
What are you talking about?
Prince Andrew, the Russia economy is in the tanks. Zuckerberg went on trial. We're going to talk about Colbert on his situation on his show the other day. Arizona's BTC bill. There's a lot. We got a lot to talk about today, Nolan. I know you got to wrap up with your guys here, so everybody stay tuned. Nolan and I will be on Roxham TV News right after this. Nolan, enjoy the rest of your show. I'll see you in a few minutes, bud.
Awesome, Hank. Thanks for that. See you soon, my man. All right.
See you soon.
Great outro for all of y'all. Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm going to play the logo in a second, and you're going to see the thanks for watching screen. Just want to tell you thanks for watching. Thanks, everyone, for all your comments. Always love them. Thanks for another great show, Nolan. Thank you for coming, Johnny Midas, indeed. So come around, check out Hank's show next. I'll be on over there. Peace out, everybody. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Slightly shortened show tomorrow, by the way. I got to warn you. I've got something to do a little earlier and got to get out of here just a few minutes before, so I'll probably end about 15 minutes earlier tomorrow. Now you know. All right, everyone. Peace.